ist für ein Interview, das wisst ihr selbst. Ich habe eine Grading-Firma, wir haben Bret Hart nach Deutschland gebracht, aber wir haben jemand hier, der das tausendmal besser macht. Herzlich willkommen auf der Bühne, Smackdown-Kommentator Walandi Tsanti. Enjoy the show. Thank you very much for being here. Genießt es. Wir starten jetzt mit dem Programm. Danke euch allen.
They still love you, Bret.
Yes, they do.
There you go. Danke, Andre. Take a seat, please. Germany has always been a hot spot for you. How do you feel after all this time to come back? What are your memories?
I just remember Germany always had one of my biggest and best fans. Right from the very start, right from day one, the German fans were my #1 fans.
And it was special to each and every one of us to say, as one of the voice of the fans right now, what made it special coming here to Germany? When did you realize that you have such a massive fan base here in Germany?
I noticed it right away. Like, I think the very first time I wrestled in Germany, when I walked out to the ring, it was different than anyone else's entrance.
I remember a segment in the US, it was about 1997-ish, when the Hart Foundation was reformed. You said to the camera, I apologize to all my fans in Canada, in the UK, and in Germany. And it was like you were talking to me personally. How was that feeling, or what was that special feeling that the German crowd was different than the North American crowd?
Well, I remember when I was Intercontinental Champion. I think I just won. And I came to somewhere in Germany, I don't remember where. It was the first day of the tour. And my boss, or the guy in the dressing room, who was a guy named Chief J. Strongbone, he said, came up to me, he said, "You're on first." And I said, "Don't put me on first." He said, "They really love me here." This is like, "Don't put me on first, it's too early." And he thought I had a big head, and he goes, "You're on first. What do you think, you're a big star now or something?" I'm like, just tell me I should be on first. And so he put me on first, and I was like, "I don't care, I'll get back to the hotel fast." But so he put me on first, and I went out, and as soon as I hit my music, I got stampeded. Like women, I don't know how many women, I'm sure it was all women, hopefully all women. I got stampeded, like 100 women charged me and knocked me down. And they pinned me right to the ground, my arms behind my back. There was all these girls grabbing my legs, and there was one. Underneath me, she was grabbing my butt. What? And it took them about 15 minutes to get everybody off me. And then I went in the ring, and then I wrestled, I think it was Papa Shango. I wrestled him, and when I won the match, and then I was walking back to the dressing room, I got stampeded again. And they they mobbed me and pulled me to the ground, and it took about 10-15 minutes to get everybody off me again and get me back to the dressing room. And when I came back to the dressing room, the guy that was my boss, he said, "You'll never be on first again."
Safe to say, the office knew you were a huge star here. You won in Germany the Bravo Otto Award. I didn't know, I swear to God, I didn't know that Bravo Otto Award will get a pop. But it's like a huge pop cultural award, magazine, TV show, which is not exclusively to wrestlers, to WWF back then, but for musicians, for pop icons, and you won that award. When did you realize it back then that it wasn't just a wrestling thing here in Germany? That it became...
I knew right away. It was different. I remember Jimmy Hart one time when we were, he wasn't managing me anymore, but I was on the bus, and there was so many girls outside the bus crying and holding up signs and telling me that they love me and all this stuff. I remember Jimmy Hart looking out the window and talking, he was just looking out there for a really long time, and he said, nobody does that. Like, that's really rare when you get that kind of passion. And I was like, yeah, I know. I've never seen it for anybody. I never saw it for Hulk Hogan. I never saw it for Macho Man or Ultimate Warrior or anybody. It was different. Anybody that remembers those days, and I imagine there's a few fans that came and watched me back in those days. It was something different when I wrestled in Germany. And every show I ever wrestled in Germany, since like back in '91, all the way through to the last time I ever worked in Germany, every show was sold out. I never wrestled in front of a crowd that wasn't sold out. Every ticket was sold, every building was full, and it was just, and that wasn't like that everywhere. It was only in Germany. Germany and England.
You spoke about wrestling here in Germany or in England in front of the European crowd. How was it different comparing to the US, and how did it influence your style of performance?
Well, I think I tried. I gave 100% either way, whether it was America or Germany or Canada. It's just the German fans. That was something special to them. I could tell that, and I don't know if it was, I always think about it and go, maybe it's the pink, maybe it was the sunglasses, maybe it was the long hair, maybe it was a little bit of all of it, and maybe it was the fact that I was good.
Pink and Black is iconic. That switch from black and blue to pink and black, was that a gut feeling or was it a conscious decision? How did that come to be?
Well, we used to have this woman that used to make our wrestling gear, and we were going to go on, this is when me and Jim, I think, we wore the darker colors, the black and the blue and all that. We were going to wrestle on a Saturday night main event TV show. And I remember telling Jim, I said we should order some new gear so we had something new on TV. And so we called her up and I said, what do you got for, like, we want something new, a new color? And she named a bunch of colors like green and orange and this and that. And then she said, oh, and I have this really nice hot pink. And I remember looking at Jim Neidhart, we were in our hotel room together, and I said, do you want to go with the hot pink? And he was like, absolutely not. He was so, not a chance. And I was like, and I don't know that I wanted pink either. So I told her, I said, I'll call you back. We'll think about it. And so we waited maybe another week or two. And then the day was getting closer. I said, we got to order something, anything. And so we called her up again in the room, and she said the same thing again. She got this really nice hot pink. And I remember I looked at Jim. I said, what do you think of the hot pink? And I remember Jim was like, I love it. And he liked it. And I was always funny because I knew that probably the next day he would have changed his mind. But we ordered the pink, and I remember putting it on, and I felt like a big piece of bubble gum. And it was so bright, it actually would burn the camera. I remember the cameraman for the WWE telling us that it was too hot. Like it actually didn't come off well on camera because it was too bright. And I remember thinking, that's exactly why we're wearing it. But that was the start of it. And I remember that day, we went to the catering. They had like a little catering part where you eat in the afternoon before the show. And I remember me and Jim, I felt I'll be honest, I felt kind of stupid wearing the pink tights at first, because it was all pink. And I felt like a big piece of bubble gum. And I was almost like, I don't think this is a good idea. And then we were in the line with the catering, and I had my tray to eat. And that was at a time, I'm guessing it was probably 1986, maybe somewhere in that range. And I remember there was this voice came behind my head that was like, don't move. And I remember thinking, that's Vince McMahon. And in those days, I was always thinking that I might get fired any day, like that they just didn't have plans for me. So when Vince McMahon said, don't move, I remember thinking, oh God, how did I get stuck here with Vince McMahon? And he walked around me about 4 times, and he goes, that's it. That's what you guys have been missing since you came here. Because you never had color. You got color now. And, I remember thinking, okay, so Vince likes the pink. And I think 3 months later, we were world champions.
You obviously mentioned Jim Neidhart, The Anvil. I want to ask you about your beginnings and, what was an ordinary day?
Back at that time, I remember when I went to WWF, I think most of my family probably thought, as probably I did, that I wouldn't last down there, that it was too many people, too many other wrestlers, too much. And I was always, I was a really good wrestler before WWF. I know a lot of people like to think that I learned to wrestle once I got to WWF, but that's not really true. I was a really good wrestler in Canada before I ever got to the States. But in wrestling, wrestling's like figure skating. And sometimes you have to have a good partner. And in wrestling, the bad guy or the villain has to set the pace and lead the match. Somebody has to lead the match, and in wrestling, the way wrestling has always worked is the villain leads the match. Because the good guy can't do anything until the bad guy does something to him, like thumb him in the throat or something, or poke him in the eye or something. Then you can get mad, and then you can start to you make the fans happy by beating them up, But when I got to WWF, all the guys that I worked with, and there was so many of them, they never gave me anything. Like they never, if I went for a drop kick, they moved.
Thank you.
If I did a big move on them, they didn't really do it right. And I just started to suffocate under the sort of the people that didn't know me, the wrestlers didn't know me, and And the wrestlers I was working with just didn't try very hard for me. I was just spinning my tires, you know, I wasn't going anywhere. And it wasn't until I turned into a bad guy with Jim Neidhart. And it took a long time for that to happen, but like a few months, 6 months or so. But once they turned me into a bad guy and tagged me up with Jim Neidhart and Jimmy Hart, now I got to drive the car. Now I get to wrestle guys and I get to lead the match and tell guys what to do and be in charge. And right away we started having better matches. And I wasn't necessarily a great bad guy yet because I only wrestled in Japan as a bad guy, so it's still different there. But after a few weeks, I remember the Hart Foundation against the British Bulldogs in the first match we ever had with them in Philadelphia. And I remember I was, like I said, 2 weeks before, nobody would have watched me wrestle. Like, nobody came out to watch me wrestle. But that night in Philadelphia, every wrestler came out and they lined the back of the wall and they were all watching, wanting to see the Hart Foundation versus the Bulldogs. And we didn't have the greatest match we ever had, but we had a really good match. And I remember that was like a turning point. It's like I went from being a really lousy wrestler in 24 hours, I was, wow, we had to watch, last night you should have seen the Hart Foundation versus the Bulldogs. And that's where it started. It started real slow with one team after another, and then it was the Killer Bees and other teams. And we started to show everybody that we were not just an average team, that we were a really good team.
And when did you know now comes the point where they're going to make you a single star? Then after WrestleMania in 1991, you started a program with Mr. Perfect Kurt Hennig, which made you the Intercontinental Champion.
Well, they dangle stuff, like they hang stuff out for you to grab, you know. And they promised me the first time we were tag champions in probably 1987.
Already?
That's when we won in 87. And the whole time we were champions, we didn't wrestle that many good teams. The only good team was the Bulldogs, and not good, I shouldn't say that. There was a lot of good teams, but the Bulldogs were the best. And a lot of the other, they didn't really do much with Jim and I when we first won the tag belts. We mostly just had the tag belts, but we didn't wrestle anybody. We did some stuff with Danny Davis, if you remember that.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff, but we didn't really get a chance. But I remember in WWF, again, we were in catering for a TV taping in Poughkeepsie, New York, where I remember one time they used to bring in a big bag of like these plastic bags filled with garbage bags filled with mail for the wrestlers. And this was when I was a bad guy. And this is a good story because it tells you how things were for me. But I remember Hulk Hogan, they bring in like 3 bags for Hulk Hogan, 3 big giant bags with mail for Hulk Hogan. And then they bring in like 2 bags for Ultimate Warrior. And then they bring in 1 bag for everybody else. And everyone just picked through and read their fan mail and look at it. And it was just like, here it is, you know. And they just dump it out on the table. And I remember I asked him, I said, where's my mail? Like, have I got anything? He goes, you got so much mail we can't bring it in. And I said, so they brought, I swear I'm not kidding or exaggerating, but they brought in about 6 or 10 bags for me. And this is all it is. This was right before WrestleMania 4, when I think it was WrestleMania 4, maybe 5, when I had my little storyline with Bad News Brown, if you remember that time period. But they promised me, Vince called me up and he goes, I don't know what it is. He goes, I don't know if it's the greasy hair or the sunglasses or what it is. He goes, but we got more mail than anybody else in the company. So we're going to give you the big push, the real push, the big. You're going to be a top guy wrestling all the top guys, and you're going to be a big star now, and we're going to give you the push that everybody dreams about. And I remember I was like, wow, and, okay. And then they turned me into a good guy with Bad News Brown after that, where he threw me out for the Battle Royal. And then they just did nothing with me. They just promised me this big push, and I went nowhere for about a year as a good guy, and then they just stuck me back with Jim Neidhart. And they kind of like, well, it didn't pan out for you. Like you weren't. I remember hearing stories about guys saying that I had no personality, I had no charisma, and I remember thinking, how do you have charisma wrestling Bad News Brown? I didn't have anybody to work with. You didn't do anything with me. You didn't give me a chance. And anyway, they kind of labeled me as a guy that wasn't capable of being a big star. Again, it's like, well, I didn't make it. And I remember going, I didn't make it because of my fault. Didn't make it because of your fault. Like the fact that you didn't do anything with me. But Vince always then was like, eventually when I was tagged up with Jim, we became tag champions the second time and had a nice run as champions. He came back to me and said, we're going to put you at singles again. We're going to give you the big push again, the real one. And I'm like, I was skeptical that they would do all that for me again. But, because there's always a lot of politics and backstabbing. Anyway, so I got turned into a good guy again with Mr. Perfect. And that was the start of it. Everything for me started with the wrestlers that loved working with me, like Mr. Perfect and Roddy Piper, and certain guys wanted to help me and prove to the office and the promotion that I could be a big star. And so I owe a lot to Mr. Perfect. He was the first guy to really go in there and just show everybody how good I was. And Kurt was, he was one of my favorite guys to ever wrestle. He was the first guy to step up and make me. And then Roddy Piper was probably the second. And when I look back on my career and I look back on wrestling, the industry, and I look back at what Roddy and Mr. Perfect did for me, and I can tell you that Hulk Hogan never did that for anybody. He never helped anybody else after his time was being the top guy. He would rather see the company sink than actually come back and help make the next star. Which in wrestling, that's kind of how it always works. Is the next guy builds the next guy after, and it's like everybody helps each other kind of thing. But Jake Roberts is another guy that never made anybody. All he did was, they feed Hulk Hogan one wrestler after another for 10 years. And when I became champion, I had nobody to wrestle against. I had Papa Shango and Bam Bam Bigelow. It was great. And there was no real fresh new stars. The company had the drug testing and all the steroid guys like Hogan and Warrior and Psycho Sid and anybody that had muscles coming out of their ears. Any of those guys, they were all gone. I remember it was just guys like me and Shawn Michaels and Marty Jannetty and the small guys like Owen. It was like we were all better wrestlers than the big guys, the big steroid freaks.
That process, when you became WWF champion the first time, when did Vince McMahon tell you that you now take the responsibility? How was that process going?
It's kind of funny, because I remember we did a European tour, getting ready to go to Europe, and this Chief J. Strongbow was kind of one of my sort of spies in the promotion, would give me a heads up all the time that something was coming up. Like, he came up and he said, Vince has a list, he wants a new champion. And he's got a list with 5 names on it. And he goes, you're on it. And I remember he told me, he goes, don't screw up, don't do anything, don't miss a town, don't be late, don't be anything. Because they might be putting the belt on you if you're reliable and, you know, like you're right at the top of the list. And I remember I totally like, yeah, right. Because they told me so many times this kind of stuff, and I was like, I never believed any of it. Like, thanks for telling me, but at the same time I registered it and kind of put it back in one of those little files in the back of my head, like, oh, I'm on a list with 5 names. They're going to probably pick somebody else, but it's nice to know. But I never thought it would ever happen. And then I went to Germany and England, wrestled Ric Flair, who was the champion. And I had such good matches. And I actually wrestled Papa Shango. And I had, one thing about Bret Hart, or the Hitman, was that I always wrestled different matches with different guys. I never had the same match with the same guy. Like, I didn't wrestle Yokozuna and do the same moves and then go in the next night and do Bam Bam Bigelow, the exact same moves that I did with Yoko, which is exactly what Ric Flair does. He wrestles everybody in the exact same way. It's the same script, the same match, the same spots, the same moves. And whereas I'm an artist. I do different every night. Like, I don't do the same thing. I might wrestle the same guy the same way, but that's a special match for him and me. That's my Papa Shango match, and that's my Bam Bam Bigelow match, and this is my Yokozuna match, but they're not the same. None of them are the same. And that's what I kind of prided myself on. And so I remember wrestling Ric Flair in Germany. Not the whole tour, but like maybe half the tour. And we had really good matches. And Rick, every night I remember I would stand on the second rope and I'd be calling him back to the ring, and he'd be walking back to the dressing room all beat up, and he'd drag the belt behind him, and that was the ending of the match, was that he was lucky to get out of the ring with his belt without losing the belt, kind of thing. And we had good matches, and then we went back to Canada, and I finished my tour we finished the tour in Italy, and I changed my airplane ticket at that time to stay another extra couple of days in Italy. And when we came back to the States, we got a memo saying that you're not allowed to change your airplane tickets, and there's a huge, I think it was a $5,000 fine for anybody that changed his ticket. And I was like, I already changed my ticket. It's already done. I've already come home. And so I thought I was in trouble for changing my ticket. Which, so when I got to the first show on the road when I came back to Canada, it was a little town close to where I live called Red Deer, Alberta, about 90 miles from Calgary. And when I got there, Chief J. Strongbow again pulled me aside and he goes, you got to get up and catch the very first flight of the day, which was like 6 in the morning. You got to fly to Red Deer, to Saskatoon, where we were doing the TV tapings, and you have to go see Vince McMahon. He's waiting for you at the building. And don't change your ticket, and don't miss your flight. And, that's all he said. He said, whatever you do, don't miss your flight. And I was like, I thought I was in trouble for changing my ticket. And so I never thought about, maybe he's got some kind of, the list of 5 names. Never dawned on me. And so I got up early in the morning, flew all the way there, and got to the arena, and that was so hard because I probably had to get up about 4:30 in the morning to get there. I had to wake up and get to the airport and all that. I got to the building, and it was a big long hallway, and Vince's room was in the middle. I was at the other end of the hall, sitting in a chair waiting, and they said he's talking to another wrestler. I didn't know who he was talking to. And then I saw Ric Flair come out of his office, and I saw Rick leave and walk the other way, like he walked away from me. And I saw Vince look down the hall and goes, "Come on down here." And so I walk all the way down to the hall, and I go in his office. And I know this sounds kind of strange, but he right away he asked me, he goes, "How long have you been here?" And I said, I can't remember now, like I got there, I think it was like 10 years or something. And he goes, "How many matches have you missed in 10 years? How many shows?" And I said, "I missed one show in 10 years. About 320 days a year, somewhere between 320 and 310 days a year, I missed one show." And then he said, "You know, we've just done everything we can think of to do with you. And we made you tag champions twice, Intercontinental champion twice." He goes, and the way he was talking, I remember sitting there in the chair going, "I think he's going to fire me." And then I started getting mad at my seat. I'm going, "This piece of shit is going to fire me." And he had my dad flying into the same city. He was flying in the afternoon to come to this show and guest manage me in my corner in a match against Mr. Perfect, which, funny enough, never ever happened because they changed his card. But I remember sitting there thinking, he's going to, I was about ready to get up and knock him out.
You did later.
Really, like getting mad in because I would have thought that I would have started to understand that maybe it might be some good news, but it wasn't. He didn't paint it out like that. It really did sound like he was going to fire me, and I was getting pretty stiff and tense. And then he just looked at me and said, "So that's why we're going to put the world belt on you tonight." And I never moved, I never said anything, I never smiled, I just sat there. And I remember he said, "Aren't you going to do anything? Aren't you going to jump up and run around the room?" He told me that every champion that he ever told that to, Hulk Hogan, whoever the champions that he had, Macho Man, he said everybody jumped up and ran around the room, they all high-fived him and were like celebrating. And he goes, "You're the first guy that never budged." I just sat there and said, "Okay." Because I didn't believe him. I thought they lied to me so many times that I was I won't believe they're going to put the world belt on me until I actually have the world belt on me. And even that whole day, I didn't believe it. I didn't take it serious until I won. I took it serious, but I didn't believe it until it happened. When I won, I was over the moon kind of thing. I thought it finally validated me and gave me a chance to prove everybody how good I could be. But I do know that the second I won the title, I started wrestling Ric Flair again in rematches. And I didn't have very good matches with Ric Flair. Like the ones I had in Germany a few weeks before were like 5-star matches. But the ones I was having in Calgary were like 1-star. Like in Canada, different towns. And I remember going, I think he's purposely not giving me good matches. He's trying to sabotage my matches. And I remember him saying that he just was having some marital problems, which maybe he was. And he kept apologizing for his lack of effort. But I wasn't having very good matches with Ric Flair. And he was going to go to WCW anyway. And I remember talking to Vince McMahon. And this is a really important thing because he told me, I think it was the very first time anyone ever said this to me. And he said, "You're the champion. You're the champion of the company. And nobody tells you what to do. You tell everyone else what to do. That for me was, like once he told me that, he goes, you're the top guy, nobody tells you what to do. Like you don't have to take orders from Ric Flair. But I was being respectful to Ric Flair because he was older and he was a lot of wrestlers always talked about Rick being one of the greatest of all time, which maybe he was, but he sure wasn't having good matches with me. And so I remember being in a dressing room with Ric Flair where he started to tell me what to do. Like I remember he asked me, he goes, what are we doing? And so I said, this is what I want to do. Funny enough, this was an Iron Man match with Ric Flair. And I remember I said, this is what I want to do. And I took about 10 minutes to outline this whole match that I was going to do with Ric Flair. And he looked at me and said, that sounds really good, but how about this instead? And he started to tell me all about what he wanted to do. And he went through this elaborate thing, and I looked at him and I said, we're not doing any of that. We're doing my match. This is what we're doing. I just told you what we're doing. And he goes, but how about we do this again? He always kept trying to change it back to the same old Ric Flair match. And I said, no, we're not doing any of that. I'm in charge. I'm the champion. And I tell you what to do. I remember Ric Flair, he just looked at me and he sat down on the bench in the dressing room, like, whatever you want. And I could tell he wasn't happy when I said that to him. And I remember Scott Hall looking at me like, whoa, like, nobody ever says that to a legend like Ric Flair. But that was a turning point for me because from that day on, for the rest of my career, I never took orders from anybody. I told everybody what to do. I would say, if you notice, and I think you can look back starting around that time period, with the exception of Wembley, where I was already, when I fought Davey Boy, that's my match, the Davey Boy Wembley match. That's a Bret Hart match. That was really my first, where I kind of, other than tag team matches and some of the ones, the little matches I had were here and there, that's when I started to take control. And I think you can see a difference between my matches prior to 1992 with Ric Flair, where a lot of times I had to make room for other guys' ideas. You know, if you're doing a match with different guys, you gotta let them include ideas, you know. And so, but starting 1992 after Ric Flair, and if you look at all my matches after that, they were better because I was in charge and I didn't have to take orders from anybody anymore. And you know, none of the wrestlers debated that. Like, I don't remember anybody ever looking at me and going, how about this instead? And then me going, well, you know, that's a better idea. But if you look back on all my matches after 1992, even with my brother Owen, every match is mine. I'm the producer, director, editor, and I put the whole match together from top to bottom, from beginning to end. And I think if you look back on my body of work, when you look at Wembley, and then you look at the Iron Man match, and you look at the match I had with my brother Owen, and you know, you just keep going and look at all these different matches. That's because those are Bret Hart matches, and if they let me be in charge back in the 80s, I would have had better matches then too. But I always had to be. You always had to include other people's ideas, and it's always a process of give and take in the dressing room. But I think I had my greatest matches once I took control.
If you could show one of your matches, just one of your matches, to a new fan now in 2025, and tell that new fan, this is what wrestling should look like. Could you pick one.
I can pick about 50.
Bad question for me.
But I do have my favorite match. My favorite match of all time was the one that just inducted into the Hall of Fame, the WrestleMania 13. I love that match.
What?
It was just such a beautiful match, and it was, you know, I know we did the Hall of Fame speech a few months ago in WrestleMania, but I talked about trust and respect, and that's exactly what it was about. It was about trust and respect. And Steve Austin trusted me, and he respected me, and that's why it was such a good match. Is that Steve? You know, like it's actually quite a story, and I hope I can explain it properly here. But it was originally in my mind that they told me that Vince told me I would wrestle Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania 13 in a rematch for the title. That was planned out, like I roughly planned out the year before. But politics and Shawn's ego, he didn't want to do that. And something changed, and then Shawn retired and lost his smile and all that stuff. And basically, I think refused to wrestle me at WrestleMania 13, just wasn't going to do it. And so they altered the card and stuck being just a match, me and Steve Austin in a no-holds-barred match, or I Quit match, or whatever you want to call it. And I remember they just killed the match because it's a no-holds-barred or I Quit match. So there's no 1, 2, 3. There's no suspense in those. Like you need those in a wrestling match. The 1, 2. Oh, the guy gets his shoulder up by a second. You know, that's how you tell your story. And by taking that part out of the match, it's a lot harder. I remember looking at Steve Austin in Chicago. Steve and me were really good friends, and I remember going out to the Build Arena, and he was sitting at ringside on the ring apron, just sitting there with the one light above the ring, and it was in the afternoon, and I hadn't seen him for a few days, and I came in and I go, well, what are we doing? And he's like, I don't know. He didn't even know. I remember we started talking, I said, you got any holds? And he goes, I got some. So he had some hold that he put on me in that match. But we didn't have very many holds. I remember going, I got the sharpshooter, I got the figure 4, I got Boston Crab, and you know, there's only so many wrestling holds, and most of them are pretty boring. And it's like, I remember Steve had a couple moves, and we kind of sat there going, this is gonna stink. It's not gonna be a very good match. And I remember being really frustrated because I knew it had to be a good match. And I really wanted to launch Steve Austin. I wanted him to be the next guy. They were grooming him to be the next star. And I wanted him to be the next star over Shawn and Triple H and whoever else was there. I remember he's the guy. So I was kind of pushing for him. So I wanted to make Steve Austin. And I just remember we really couldn't come up with any ideas for the match. We just kind of sat there going, this isn't going to be very good. And then I thought about it, and I said, this is what I think. I said, it's like a school fight. Like when two kids fight at school, and I'm like the popular guy at school, like the quarterback on the football team. Like everybody likes me, and everybody knows who I am, and I'm the star of the school for the last little while, and I'm popular, and everyone likes me, and now you're this bad kid that comes to the school, and everybody can tell, like, oh, he's a troublemaker, and and then you start to think about, like, what would happen if this kid has a fight against me, Bret Hart, kind of thing. And I remember I described it like a school fight. And because I remember a school fight that was kind of like this, similar kind of characters. And I remember the fight that I had watched at school when I was a kid, where the kid that was a good guy, it was two big guys, the two biggest guys in the school that were going to fight finally after school at the beginning of the year. And it was a new kid that had just moved to the school, was going to fight the guy that had been there for a long time. And it was like, I remember in the afternoon telling somebody at school, I said, it's going to be a sellout after school. It's going to be packed. Because everybody wants to see this fight, because it's a curiosity. And I found a parallel with that with Steve. And I said, it's like a school fight. And you and me are going to switch places, because in the school fight that I watched, and I described to Steve, the kid that was popular won the fight, beat the guy pretty good. And the guy that lost the fight put up a good fight, but he lost. And I remember by Monday morning, nobody would talk to the kid that was popular. Everyone was kind of mad because he did a good job of beating the other guy up. And the kid that lost the fight, he was like everybody's friend. Everybody loved him because he lost. And I kind of used that psychology, if it makes any sense, with the match with Steve. I said, this is the same situation. And the one thing that Steve knew that nobody else did is that Steve was the only one that Vince McMahon told that the next night I was gonna do my big interview and turn heel on everybody and tell America to kiss my ass. And so Steve told me, he goes, we're basically going to switch places. I'm going to be a babyface. They're building me up to be a babyface now, and they're going to build you up to be a heel starting tomorrow. He was the only one that knew. And so we understood where we were going. And that match, it's such a good fight. Like the psychology of the match. It was very even all the way through it. And I do remember with Steve Austin, when I was talking to him, I said to him, you know what would really make this match iconic is if you were bleeding. And if I had, we knew the ending was that was the only end. The only thing we knew that Vince McMahon told us is that I win, Bret's winning on a sharpshooter. Steve's not tapping out. He's just gonna go unconscious. That's the ending. So that's all they told us in the match and how much time we had. I think all the time we wanted. But I remember telling Steve, I said, I think if you were bleeding, it would make the match like iconic and people will never forget it, because in those days blood was not allowed. No more blood. It was banned. Can't happen. Although it does happen in accidents. And I remember Bad Brown one time. I got up and he hit me with his tooth. Poked me in the head with his tooth. In my head, I bled everywhere because it was just a little hole in my head from his eye tooth. And so accidents happen, and there's blood in wrestling that can be real. And so I told Steve, I said, I think it'd make all the difference in the world if it was blood. And he goes, I said, have you ever done it before? Now I know Steve Austin has a different answer today, and I'm not refuting him or anything, but as I remember it, I said, have you ever, had blood before, done it yourself? And he said, I've never done it before, but I'll sure as hell try. And I was like, you can't practice that kind of thing at WrestleMania. Like there's cameras and there's all the things. It's too high stakes. And I looked at him and I said, let me do it. And I remember Steve was like, that's the one thing about Steve is that he thought about what I said, and it's like, I remember I said, if you've never done it before, you don't want to be practicing out there, because it's not an easy thing to do. And so he goes, all right, I think maybe Steve might have been a little worried, and rightfully so, that maybe he could get into a lot of trouble if we did this. And I told myself, we'll make it look like an accident, and nobody will know. And I said, hold on, you have to trust me. If you trust me, don't worry, I'll be really professional, I'll do it right. And, I did tell Steve Austin, I said, if you change your mind anytime and you don't want to do it, we'll abort. I won't do it, and we'll just go without it. I said, but if you, like, the way it works, I don't know if I'll explain this, but a razor blade is this little square, two-edged, double-edged razor blade, and you cut it into 4 pieces, so they're all kind of the same. Then you take one piece and then you trim it so that it has a point sticking out, and you tape it up with wrist tape or whatever, and just a little point sticking out. And then the way I learned to do it, which is probably the best way to do it if you're ever going to be wrestlers, and you guys, I used to carry it right in my mouth, right here. I used to carry it on the top of my gum. And funny enough, there's a little groove right here in your gum, and it just sits right there. I just sat there the whole match. I had carried it under my lip the whole match. Even I think I did an interview before I walked out to the ring. I had it sitting right there. And I told Steve, I said, once I spit it out and I have it in my hand, there's no turning back. I don't care what you say. You're going to be bleed whether you like it or not. And he knew that. And so when we had the match, if you ever watch it, we're in the middle of the ring and he's got me in a rear chin lock. And I asked him, I said, are we doing it? Is it a go or not? And he's like, okay, let's do it. And I'm like, okay. And so I gave him a couple of elbows or something, and he sidestepped me, and if you watch, he throws me out of the ring. And then I spit it out on the floor, and now I got it in my hand. And Steve drops down on the floor, pulls me up, and grabs me, goes to run me into the railing. And as he's pulling me up, he goes, maybe we better not. So then he grabs me and starts to throw me into the railing, and I'm reversing, and he falls into the railing. And as I'm throwing him, I said, it's too late. And I threw him into the railing, which was, I said, I try to pretend you hit the railing for real, because it's going to happen right after that. And, so I walk over, and if you ever watch that, Vince McMahon's about 2 feet away, watching me, every move I make. And I grabbed Steve in a rear chin lock, and I pulled his head real close, and I stuck him about the size of your thumbnail. It wasn't not a very big cut, just a little tiny cut. And nobody saw it. There was 20,000 people watching me cut Steve Austin's head, but not one fan saw me cut his head, which is funny because it just was so right in front of everybody, and no one noticed, But as soon as I did it, it was like a masterpiece. I could tell, like, I love so many things in that match, there's just so many things, like even the figure 4 on the post. I never did that before. That was the first time I ever did it. And same with I remember telling Steve in the corner, I said, I'll start punching on you really bad, really punching you. And I just want you to, because I'll stand close up to you, like not too far away. And if you kick me from that angle, and you kick up, if you're right in front of me, I'm going to stand right here. You'll kick me in the butt. You won't kick me in my equipment. I said, but it'll look great. It'll look really good. It'll look like real. And that's the way we did it. And I always love that spot because, you watch Ric Flair matches and you see him do this, where he does that thing it's like, you ever see anybody win a fight with that? Like, you ever see anybody ever do that in a real fight? It's like the stupidest move anybody had. Zero imagination. imagination and absolutely zero believability. But the one with Steve was so good. Like when he kicked me, I remember falling back on the mat, and I remember going, that was so good, like so perfect, looked so real. And everything in that match looked so real. Like the fight looked so intense and brutal, and that's what I love about that match, is that no animals were harmed in the making of that movie.
You've expressed your creative side in wrestling. The topic today is also from GSG, the card grading, and you are drawing yourself. We have great pictures here and here. Let's talk about that. Is there perhaps even a creative goal, a project now for Bret Hart in the future, or now for the present, that you still pursue?
Well, I'm hoping to do a second book.
Oh, great.
Third book and a fourth. But I would like to do a follow-up book. Maybe I'm still working on it, because it'll be a different book. It won't be so much about my wrestling, because there's so much. I had people say there's too much wrestling in my first book. But I think I have another book in me somewhere to just about more about my life and how it's gone since wrestling. But that's a working project. It may never happen, but hopefully I'll get something in that. But I'm also working on a coffee table book, where I'd like to do a book with all my artwork in it, and that would be my next project.
Right before we close and we get to the part which everyone is waiting here, the meet and greet with you yourself, you can all take pictures. I just want to say, like, personally for everyone, say thank you, not only as a fan, but someone who grew up watching you and learning from you. You were not just this great wrestler, the best there is, the best there was, the best there ever will be. You said it yourself, you carried yourself with respect, with dignity, with integrity and heart, no pun intended. And for many of us, especially here in Germany, this was really important to us.
Thank you, Bret!
You didn't just entertain us, you shaped who I became, and you shaped who all of us became. So thank you for coming back to Germany. Enjoy your time. Thank you very much.